I am so excited because right now I have one of my best friends here with me, Shaun Grant. He is a spiritual entrepreneur, motivational speaker. And first and foremost, Shaun, thank you so much for getting on the line with me. In fact, just so everybody knows, we had been planning to do this because we have a big project going on. We're in process of trying to get a licensed home opened for people leaving prison in Las Vegas to that are eligible for parole to actually get out, because there are no licensed places for women, at least. But before we get into that, I just want to acknowledge George Floyd's family and George Floyd, and our heart goes out, tremendously. I wanted to get your perspective on, how this has affected you as a Black man, and just in your community, your family. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well, I think, as well as can be. Death really has a way of charging up emotions and really making you think about what's going on, within our family dynamic and then within the world in general. And so I think it just really enables you to take a good look at, what am I putting out into the world? How am I being a catalyst for love or a catalyst for, anything else? And I think for me personally, it's helped me to kind of see, okay, what's the real issue happening here? Why is this continually unfolding within the United States, and how can we start at an individual level to sort of kind of turn the ball around a bit, So I've just been thinking a lot of that, and ultimately it's first and foremost feeling those emotions and then being able to get out of them, because I think when we're charged up, we can't really make the best of decisions, because we're just kind of, going in so many different directions. But it's been a lot of that, to kind of just feel it out and then really connect within to sort of see, okay, what's the next step? Not the whole thing, but the next step.
Yeah. Okay. So I know, we've been friends for a long time, Shaun. Both you and your wife have been amazing friends, influences on my life. And when I opened that home in Las Vegas, and I had to close it, unfortunately, but when it was open, you guys came out and made healthy food. You guys are just amazing, like spiritually, physically. You teach, not just spiritual awareness, but body awareness. And you're a physical trainer, as well as you brought the Qigong practice into the home when we had it open. I want you to talk a little bit about that and like what that does for your spirituality in terms of like, what is Qigong? What are you doing now? I know that you've kind of transitioned into a new practice. What are you doing? What are you up to?
Yeah, so that was a really fantastic time and a great opportunity to just step out, of your comfort zone and really kind of see what else is out there in the world and how you can use a part of yourself to help. So to answer your question, Qigong is energy cultivation. And so it was developed hundreds of years ago. And ultimately it comes down to cultivating your life force in a way that it puts you into complete alignment with the divine flow, right? So you've heard the expression, go with the flow, be in the flow. It's just basically allowing you to tap into a state of ease and a state of just pure joy without really needing anything outside yourself other than your own auric field. So I've taken that and then some other things that I've learned along the way and developed what we call the Timberwolf Method, which, I teach every week on Tuesdays on my Facebook Live. And so this basically takes all of those movements like Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, different things, and it brings it together to sort of amplify that connection to the divine flow. The concept I like to use with it is clear, cleanse, integrate, and flow. And so we go through a series of movements that allow us to work through each of those elements and then ultimately get into the flow. And then we end it with basically just stepping into stillness and silence, because that's when you feel your greatest joy, when everything else sort of dissipates and you're just connected to that unlimited aspect of yourself.
Yeah, that peacefulness, that love is really that higher consciousness. Like the closer we can get to source creator, whether you call God or universal intelligence, that kind of resonates on the highest calibration, right? That love, that light, that peacefulness.
Right.
And so I know that, you know, you have done podcasts throughout the years. You've done, you know, I know that you're big into entrepreneurship and you kind of connect these two together. So when it comes to like helping entrepreneurs and kind of their purpose, their guiding and your podcast, like what can you say? I know that you have a newer podcast. You've had a lot throughout the years, but what is your latest podcast right now? And
the latest one is it was actually done off of a speech I gave earlier this year in March before the whole COVID stuff happened, and it's called Your Spirit, Your Business. And it just talks about entrepreneurship from a spiritual perspective. And so spiritual, not in the sense of religion, but spirituality in the sense of connecting to yourself. That is God, that is the source, that is the all that is, that truly encompasses everything, and then allowing that to connect to your intuition and taking step by step by step to basically build a business, build, you know, a side income or whatever it is. But ultimately, it just takes a spiritual turn on entrepreneurship. It's predicated upon that connection alone, in the sense that source knows all, source is all. So if we can tap into that energy, we give ourselves a greater opportunity to select, you know, options, things, changes, directions. You know, we talked about pivoting earlier. It gives us the highest chance to be able to select what's in our best interest and what's in most alignment with us as it relates to ourselves and our businesses.
And our purpose, right?
Exactly.
If you could create a business where you're actually serving your purpose and feeding your soul at the same time and making money, you know, we are living in a system where, you know, where we do have to make money at this point. I know there's a lot of conflict right now between, you know, there's a lot of systemic issues going on in the world right now. You know, many are, I mean, there's so many, but just to take one that's, you know, that has been important to us in our, you know, through the years, has been mass incarceration. And how that's affected the African-American community. And I think that that is one, you know, not just to focus on it because of everything that's been happening, but to focus on it because that literally is a part of my mission and my purpose, and opening that house and, you know, continuing on with that mission. And now partnering with a great group of people to try to get a licensed home actually up and running in Las Vegas has been such a journey. And you and Sarah have been a part of that journey. So I just want to thank you for that. But I do think that addressing that, you know, that on a systemic level, mass incarceration, how it's affected the African-American community. And I think that there's a reason and rightly so to be upset right now. I mean, I think people are upset about it, and and I'm upset about it. And you know, how do we justify going like, well, we should just be at peace and all this, you know, when there's so much to be upset about? How do we deal with that? What is your take on that?
Well, I think ultimately, and you know, speaking from experience of having multiple relatives like locked up for long periods of time, and you just mentioned it a second ago, I think the one thing that's missing from those individuals is purpose, right? Because purpose has a way of aligning us to help us to get to the proper state, to take the right type of actions. So to me, I think when you look at someone, or just everyone that has been incarcerated, there's no sense of purpose there, whether it's, you know, conscious or unconscious, you know. And so it's like, in order to really solve this issue, I think we really have to take a step back, you know, because even with all the stuff going on, you know, and I harp on this again, but I feel like it's all done in a really emotionally charged up way, you know, as opposed to, okay, let's put that aside and let's see how we can help each other first. Because one step in the right direction, no matter how big or small it is, helps. You know, the universe meets us halfway once we begin to take that step, but it's getting to the place where we can take the steps in order for them to create the impact needed to continue to build and build and build, and ultimately, you know, transform that issue of the entire incarceration.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to, you know, say like being upset is wrong, because it's not wrong. It's part of the human experience. And I think that even just observing what you're feeling is a very important part of the process. You can't make it right or better until you observe what you're actually feeling, right?
Until you're completely right. You have to feel these emotions. You have to feel them. You have to really discover what that anger, what that disgust, even hatred, if, you know, you're on that level, what is that stemming from? What's the root cause of that? Because then that will guide you to the real issue, you know? And so there's just not enough of that, and there's not enough taught. And I come from a really, like, you know, intense African-American community growing up in the city of New Orleans. And I can just honestly tell you, like, you know, aside from me attending private school, but as I'm living there, none of that stuff is taught. You know, it's very raw, so to speak, in the sense that you have to find your own way. And a lot of times, if the guidance isn't there from an internal source perspective or from somebody to show you, you almost always wind up making the decisions that are harmful to yourself and to others.
Right, like that sense of purpose kind of it will connect you to the divine at a peaceful state. And really, when you're at that peaceful state, that's like that state of creation. That's when you are the best at creating, right?
Exactly.
So if you're charged up and upset and angry, and you're feeding that, and I do feel like the media, it's like an opportunity to get ratings, and so that's what's being fed. And you know, Black lives do matter. I'm going to say that straight up. I do think that mass incarceration is affecting Black lives in our country, and I also think that acknowledging that is important right now, and always. But I also feel like I'm hearing your message and saying, okay, you're mad, and rightfully so, and I think that justice does need to be served. How do we elevate that from there? And, you know, are we having the right conversation around this? You know, not the right conversation, but I think just having the conversation, it could be uncomfortable, but having conversation, I think, is so important. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I just think the real conversation to be having, and I talked about this on the podcast the other day, the real conversation to be having is, why is there a lack of self-love in so many individuals, right? And the reason I say that is because self-love, having a strong enough sense of it, allows you to take a step back and say, okay, what can I do to help myself until somebody else can help me, right? Because ultimately, there's nobody that's going to just pull me out of the pit, so to speak, and put me up on top of a pedestal. I really have to take a moment to think about, what can I do that's, one, not harmful to other people, but still in line with my truth and my values, right? I think of what I see as far as conversation, and it's just draining to even look at. You know, it's a bunch of hotheads, a lot of people that want to speak, but nobody really wants to listen. And that's not everybody, but it's a majority that continues to perpetuate the problem, perpetuate the issue. Because if I'm Black and I'm white, and I, as a Black man or as a Black, woman, or vice versa, if I can't listen to what you're saying and what you're feeling and be able to respect that and agree or disagree, that creates even more of an issue, right? And I just think nobody's hearing anybody out, and the media just throwing gas on the fire, and it's making it worse. And now you got football players, who are involved in it now, and it's just growing and growing and growing. And you just see so much like division within the States, especially with people. And it's sad because it doesn't have to be that way if we take a moment to step back and to really see things for what they truly are.
Yeah, I think that the mentality of conflict kind of perpetuates the conflict, right?
Yes.
Like the fear and anger and hatred. You know, if I go out and I call someone else, you know, I'm gonna now judge you for what you are, even though I really don't know. I mean, you know, I can't really come from a place of being judgmental if I don't really know, you know.
Right.
I think there's a lot of mixed messages right now in terms of like, you know, how should I perceive, you know, is it racist to not be, you know, be posting something or posting something? And, you know, there's so much confusion. I don't know if we get to a better understanding of people when there's just confusion and no dialogue. Dialogue is so important.
Exactly. It is. And I think it ties in to, one, just kind of get the emotions out of the way, and then also start moving to a place of awareness, right? So a lot of, you know, people have come to me, like, it's so crazy how some people I don't even talk to on Facebook, but I made a post the other day talking about my experiences with, you know, being pulled over by the police and how I approached that and how I was able to get through it multiple times.
What was that? Can you enlighten us a little bit?
Yeah, so
a point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I through the years of 2012, 2018, my wife and I lived in Sarah and I lived in Marina Del Rey and Culver City. And so I worked as a fitness professional throughout that time. And a lot of times I was on the road at like 4:30, 4:45 in the morning. And I got pulled over a multitude of times, right? And it's just like, here we go again, right? So, you know, or at first you're just like, okay, why are you pulling me over? But then for me, something had to click. And it was interesting because this was like before a lot of the police brutality came to the forefront. Like this was before Trayvon Martin. This was before, you know, a lot of the people that have suffered such a fate. And so, but I always felt like it's up to me to establish a level of peace and understanding with this officer, no matter how, you know, rude or aggressive or authoritative he is. Not that they ever were, but you can kind of get a vibe from an officer a lot of times, and you just want to diffuse the situation, you know. And so within that experience, it kind of helped me to see like, okay, what really matters when you're going through this as an African-American male. And so you start to look at the egoic side of things, and it's like, well, I shouldn't be disrespected, or, you know, I shouldn't be talked that kind of way, or he's being racist. Yeah, that happens. But if I transcend that and I go even higher, I can get out of this saying, I walked away with my life. You know, my wife doesn't have to bury her husband. Like, she doesn't have to call my mom saying I was killed in a routine traffic stop. Just by being able to gauge the situation, to encourage a level of peace, encourage an idea that, officer, look, it's not right under any circumstance, but I'm going to cooperate with you. And I feel like that in itself has really helped me to just get an understanding that he's doing the job. He's trying to do the job to the best of his ability, at the highest level of consciousness that he's at. And I can respect exactly where he is, wherever it is, and get over my own personal self, right? And I know that's hard. That's hard for a lot of African Americans to get past that point, because the whole idea of being disrespected is what throws them over the edge. But at the same time, for me personally, disrespect over being able to live my life and share this story, and then now create awareness for so many other people, you know, Caucasian, Indian, Hispanic, who don't really understand, or maybe just had never been in that situation. It helps them to kind of see a perspective that creates peace, or that's predicated on peace and love, and not so much, you know, let me get back at him, let me go and use force, as opposed to peace, so to speak.
Yeah, there's a book called Power versus Force.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically was an experiment done by, I forget the doctor's name, but they did an experiment where basically they showed like the calibration of low frequency mindsets, and it was like fear, shame, guilt, anger, hate.
Yeah.
These like calibrate kind of on the lowest level. So once you get up to those loving, detaching yourself, and so that you can get to a place of peace, it's all about that, right? It's about your internal state and how you can find that state of peace no matter what's going on around you. Because when you're reacting to someone who's throwing hate at you, now you've just gone down to their level, right? And, it's hard too, because the other day I instead of turning on the news, I saw that there was this TED Talk right in front of me, and it was an African-American man talking about how he really wanted to understand why people were racist. And so he had his secretary call the international head of the KKK and set up an appointment. And so they started sitting down together. You should check this out. I'll send you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Then he was like, I wanted to, and I disagreed with some things, and I understood some other things. And so we sat there, and he had his bodyguard, and the bodyguard had his gun, and, and then a year went by, and they kept getting together. And then eventually the international leader of the KKK started coming to his house and like sharing meals with him without the bodyguard. And then eventually, he ended up retiring from the KKK because he was like, this guy is like my best friend.
Right.
So it was like, it wasn't, if the African-American guy in the first place wasn't willing to even listen to this conversation, then he wouldn't have changed the idea, these crazy ideas that this guy probably grew up with. He didn't even know, like he thought that was right because of the way that he was raised and the constructs that he was raised in. Very interesting to me, because that's just a good example of how, even if you don't agree with someone, to sit and listen to that perspective is just an interesting idea,
Right. Yeah. No, it truly is. I feel like racism is something that's taught. And the reason that I know that is because I've experienced it, the other side of it, multiple times in my life. So I can remember being 12 years old, and there's, one white kid who moves into the neighborhood, and I had nothing but love for him. And he's still my friend to this day. But then I thought about how the other children were, continually badgering him over his color and over his, anything. And the one thing that I was really grateful for, around that time is that my mom never tolerated any of that. She always accepted everyone. And so for me at that point, it was just natural to accept everyone, and it never was about color because I wasn't taught for it to be that way, and then you fast forward to the first year of university, and there's this guy comes in, a white guy, he's basically grew up in really rural settings, and and this is actually hilarious, he reaches over to his suite mate after me and my black roommate walk out of the room, and he says, I've never seen any of them that aren't on television, And so
he's never seen
And so he was dead serious, because the guy who he was rooming was from New York, and he had seen them all the time. But to show you how great this story is, so we go throughout the year, literally 2 or 3 months into the year, and we become such good friends with this guy, to the point where we're driving back from a night out, and he's like, I love you guys. I didn't understand what it was all about first, and I had been taught other stuff, but you guys are just like me. You're people, we're all, the same. We're just the same, and it was just like, wow, this is the guy that was basically, part of the Klan,
right.
in many, and in some aspects. And all of a sudden, he's telling like these two dark African American males, how much he loves them. And it just goes to show you what you're taught and what you experience plays a big role into how you see and view the world, you know? And so I just thought that was interesting to see how, you know, because sometimes we're under the impression that it's innately in you to just hate, but it's not the issue. Your innate sense of being is love, right?
Right.
So
really we have to deconstruct ourselves to shed the hate so that we can go back to our natural state, which is love and peace.
Exactly.
Wow. So you're in an interracial marriage, and how has that been for you? Because I know that is something that you probably have to deal with, you know, a number of issues that other people don't need to deal with. So tell me a little bit about that and your experience with being in an interracial marriage.
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, aside even from this time, there's been times where it's been really, I guess, challenging in a sense of, I guess, creating awareness for, you know, Sarah to kind of understand where, you know, Black people may be coming from when they see me with somebody of the opposite race. And then there's, you know, places where you go and people just accept it for what it is, that love has no color. But ultimately, I at first, you know, this was something that I used to think about a lot, but then, you know, I sort of kind of just got into this place of not really wanting to expend energy on something I couldn't control, right? Because, you know, people are going to think what they want to think. They're going to say what they're going to say, you know, and ultimately we have to choose, okay, give your free will, say what you want to say, you know, feel what you want to feel, but ultimately what makes me happy at the end of the day. And I try to focus on that. And that really helps to transcend a lot of the issues that are out there, because, you know, we'll go to certain places and people, you know, will give you those looks like, sell out, you know, like, I mean, that's as real as it gets, but you see that all the time. But, you know, I saw it, I used to get drawn into it so much more in the past, not so much anymore now, because ultimately, if I wake up every day and I look in the mirror, I got to make sure that I'm in alignment with love, with true love. And that's what I'm choosing every single day, to be with my wife, regardless of what color she is. So, you know, I can't control anybody else, but, you know, all you can do is just teach them awareness about, you can't help who you fall in love with, regardless of what color they are.
Yeah.
Know?
So for anybody who is maybe struggling with their own self-love right now, what is your advice for people right now that are struggling with, you know, being upset right now at this time?
In all honesty, I think the very best thing you can do is meditate. And it's not even go to the top of the Himalayas and, you know, get your tree pose on and start, you know, feeling, you know, the wind blow through your hair and stuff, but just
yeah.
But I think just sit with yourself, right? Because there is an unlimited and eternal, a radiant, divine aspect of all of us that when we really just kind of wipe out all the noise, that essence is true love. That essence is true joy, peace, ease in action and expression, and it wants to embody you. It wants to connect to you. When you take the time to sit with that and sit in stillness, that'll help you. And you don't even have to be a master at it. It's just being silent and being still and allowing the love that has no words to overcome you. And that will really help with you to love yourself more. And then the beautiful thing is everything sort of just seems automatic from that point on. You just kind of know what to do after you've connected to that space.
Yeah, and the great thing is that both you and your wife have amazing resources for people to get in touch with that. And so I encourage, you know, if you guys are interested in learning more from Shaun, please reach out to him. He's got, I'm going to put your websites up and so that, they could go to your websites and check you out. But also, if you want to just, reach out to him, message him, I encourage you to, because he's just a wealth of feel good over here.
Thank you so much. There, I just wanted to plug one in real quick. So there's a product that we created together. It's called Intercom in the Midst of Chaos. And this is such a great program just all together, but also now because there's chaos completely around us. And the most important thing you can do is find a way to be calm through it all, because then you can have your head, your mind in the right place to make the right decisions, but also to sort of see things for what they truly are, and then move, make your way on to being just living in a happier state, And so that product, that program can really help anyone who's struggling right now, having the calm throughout all the stuff that's going on
throughout
right
the
now
chaos.
in the world.
That's a great title. When did you guys come up with this? Was that like you already had this product when all this stuff has happened?
Yeah, we had it, and so it was funny because we were trying to think about, okay, what's a good, catchy, but then ultimately it's like, okay, what resonates? If I was doing this product for myself, what would resonate with me? And the moment I hear Intercom, that's all I need to hear. Especially during chaos, it's perfect. But ultimately, when I'm calm, when I'm peaceful, like I can live my best life. And I know that's true with like everybody. You always have to be in a relaxed state to have your wits about you, and it can only go up from there.
Yeah, so true. Okay, well, we'll make sure we put a link to that. And thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I'm always inspired by you. So namaste.
Thank you. Namaste.
All right, we'll see you soon.